All right, welcome everybody. I'm Massimo Iamello, and I'm the lead of MNP's Technology, Media, and Telecommunications practice for Quebec. And we're excited to welcome you all to our AI and FinTech panel. And today's subject is how AI is transforming how we interact with financial institutions. For those of you who may not know, MNP is a leading national accounting, tax, and business consulting firm in Canada. At MNP, we understand that you work in a hyper-competitive, rapidly changing technology environment, and you need advisors who are nimble, who are able to mobilize fresh ideas and resources to address rapidly shifting circumstances. We have strong connections in key technology, media, and telecom centers, including the Greater Toronto Area, Southwestern Ontario, Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver. To every client, the partners and professionals of MNP bring these value connections along with leading-edge skills and innovative solutions, all focused on helping your company become faster, better, and more successful. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our panel today. First, we have Layial El-Hadi, the Executive Director at Fintech Cadence. Layial, I'll let you say a couple words.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Massimo, and pleasure to be on a panel with Mark and Dev. As you mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Fintech Cadence, and for those who might not have heard of who we are and what we do, we're a nonprofit organization based in Montreal, but operating across Canada, and our main focus is really to foster the early stage fintech ecosystem, and we do so by providing educational certificates around fintech and the trends and technologies. The second thing is we help build and support fintech startups, so anything from I have an idea up until $750,000 in funding. We work with and we support. And of course, we collaborate directly with financial institutions. And we've worked in the past with Desjardins, National Bank, just to name a few, where we've directly worked with them on either open innovation competitions or identifying opportunities in fintech or finding challenges that they're facing internally that can be solved through partnerships or collaborations with fintechs that exist or to exist.
Great, wonderful. Should be a great addition to the panel here. Next, we have Mark Morissette, the CEO and co-founder of Foxquilt. Mark, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Likewise, very grateful to be part of a dynamic panel and looking forward to the discussion. Foxquilt is an insurance technology company that leverages technology and data science to join like-kind small businesses so they can be empowered in accessing tailor-made offerings instantly. And we are in the fourth year of our journey and looking to transcend into becoming a modern carrier very shortly. So lots of good insights in working with international partnerships and developing the next generation of AI and ML to basically evolve the back end.
Amazing. We look forward from hearing from you. And next off, we have Dev Mishra, our solution lead data engineer in AI and machine learning at MNP. Go ahead, Dev. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Massimo. Nice to meet you all. I have been doing a lot of research in the last couple of years on this space. This is exploding, so good to be part of this and to share my knowledge with this panel. As Massimo said, I lead a team of around 12 senior seasoned consultants in the space of data engineering, AI, and ML. And we will recently, MNP acquired a company called T4G, and this 100+ people are part of that organization. And T4G is a 25-year-old organization with having coast-to-coast offices and work across Canada in the data engineering and AI space. So suddenly MNP has the capability of 25 years. Yeah, so that's about me. I have around 16 years of experience in telcos and consulting, and especially 6 to 7 years in advanced analytics, machine learning, and AI.
Thanks, Dev. We're very excited to have you on the panel with us. All right, so let's get into it then. So the financial services providers are making efforts to adopt AI for mundane task automation, consistent customer services and experiences, deep dive into behavior analysis, as well as efficient fraud prevention and detection. They also need to manage the risks and concerns that arise along the journey of transformation. Fintechs are playing a key role in supporting these digital transformations of FIs and releasing their own innovative tools for the market. So let's let's take a deeper dive into a few of these items. First off, so from a consumer and retail FSI perspective, what are we seeing as the more innovative and disrupting AI-powered applications being introduced to the market? And what issues are they solving? So I'll shoot it over to Layial. Maybe you could kick things off for this first question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great to see some of the startups. You mentioned how are they supporting financial institutions, so really seeing how they're collaborating right off the bat. I know 5 years ago when we were talking about fintech, AI was very trendy. Everyone was saying they have some form of AI solution. I think through time and maturity, we started to realize, okay, is this really AI or is this data collection, or which version, which format of it really is it? Now we can look at a few Canadian examples that are integrating AI that might be partnering with financial institutions or working on their own on the side to really develop their work. And maybe I'll start with one that a lot of Canadians are very familiar with, and that's Wealthsimple, based in Toronto, operating the rest of Canada. So they use forms of robo-advising, and they've integrated some AI tools as well internally. There's also Owl.co, and Owl.co uses extensive data, so they use different data points or extensive amount of data points, and then they're able to leverage different AI technologies to be able to sort through those data points. And Owl.co really does focus on, due diligence, focuses on background checks, focuses on data collection for consumers. So there's quite a lot of great things that they're doing as well, and they've been growing over the last few years exponentially. They're also a startup that came out of Holt Accelerator, based out of Montreal. And then maybe another two examples I'll give is Mocha, which is formerly Milo. They do a lot of, they integrate a lot of AI elements as well. And then lastly, I'll give Hard Bacon too. And Hard Bacon is now working with Desjardins closely. Julien Bro, who is their CEO, has been working quite extensively on the robo-advising in the back end, on the investment strategies on the back end as well, and then using a lot of different data points to be able to better provide solutions to his consumers. And now through the partnership directly with financial institutions, able to leverage that. So quite a lot of great Canadian examples that are trying to use different elements of artificial intelligence.
Really, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
Guys, Mark, Dev, what are you seeing here?
Sure. Well, Foxquilt is another great Canadian example that's basically, baking in, sophisticated AI. We started 4 years ago, and you're building that architecture to support your longer tail vision of what that customer journey should look like and what customers are telling us. And so we're no different than any other e-commerce retailer at the end of the day, selling financial instruments. And in our case, we're targeting business owners and selling and marketing business insurance. And what we've tried to bake into our microservices architecture is essentially a customer journey that joins and attaches that customer with a tailor-made offering in the back end instantly. And how that works is the sense that in the back end, the AI is affording us to discern the nature of the operations of that particular business. And then through really, really sophisticated partnerships with reinsurers and other carriers, we now have the autonomy and the ability to draft and engineer our own proprietary products. So what the machine affords us to do is create pathways and gateways to that very detailed, tailor-made offering for that unique appetite. And that didn't exist years ago. When where it's evolving quite quickly is that now the machine can get smarter, and it can create more succinct pathways to end product offerings and empower the customer to be in control of their destiny as far as product. As their business expands and grows, they can now add, frills or delete frills, determining on the nature of the change of their offering, their company.
Yeah, so I can add on to both of the comments. Any AI or machine learning related application, these are buzzwords. Like as Layial was saying, people build a report, they say I did a machine learning application. So we have to be very, very careful in what exactly we mean by AI and machine learning. In my experience, application like powered with AI and machine learning solves one of the three purposes. Either it helps you add a new revenue line, so increase revenue, or it helps you to reduce the operational cost by some way of automating or optimizing any process in the organization. Thirdly, either improve the customer experience, which in results in a better brand value. So a lot of organizations are in any categories. However, some foundational concepts like security, privacy, and all the risk management aspects of it, some of the players also play in that area, supporting any application built in these three areas. Now, I would just give an example on the customer experience side, which I have noticed, and it's very, very powerful, and I'm sure a lot of you must have experienced yourself. If you have noticed, nowadays, most of the banks also have their own apps. And if you go into the app and you start making a call, you don't actually, you bypass a lot of queuing or security questions and a lot of things. What happens in the background is your voice becomes your identity. And when you start connecting, you directly reach to a bot, it's an automated bot, which checks all your security based on your voice, based on your, all the information inside the app, and directly lets you answer your questions. If your questions are basic, if you remember the IVR in the past where you have to press 1, 2, now those days are gone. You just talk like you are talking naturally to a human being. And that's possible through machine learning, and you completely change the customer experience and the waiting time. At the same time, you don't always forward every customer to a human being, so saving cost on the operation. So this is one example which has been, I'm sure a lot of you must have experienced this in your day-to-day life as well.
Yeah, that'll definitely solve a lot of problems. Looking forward to that. All right, so we'll dive into the second question here. Is what are some of the key challenges that AI and fintech will need to address before mass consumer adoption? And Layial, not to pick on you again, but I think you're well suited to kick off this question.
It's my pleasure. It's always easier to go first, and that way to scrape for the answers. So there's quite a few things when we talk about AI and consumers directly. And I think maybe if we want to talk about how well we can actually start integrating AI in solutions, not only in the financial institutions, but in fintechs as well, we'd be hard pressed to not mention open banking. And for those audience members who are listening that might not be very familiar with open banking is really trying to create policy where consumers own their data versus third-party organizations, et cetera, or third-party companies or third-party institutions. Now, that's huge, with open banking coming to Canada, that's going to have huge implications for what it means for products that are going to be developed, whether again, internally in financial institutions or externally in fintechs, as I'm sure both Deb and Mark can attest to that, being from respectively the two different stakeholders. We've seen it implemented in the UK, we've seen it implemented in Europe. But with that comes a lot of information and education that's needed to consumers. And Dev mentioned the phone systems and how now it's using your voice as recognition. That's an easy thing for consumers to kind of wrap their head around. Okay, so the computer, or there's something on the other side that's listening to my voice, and the next time when I call, it's going to recognize the same speech patterns, and then that's going to serve us as security. But further to that, what other elements, what other technologies of AI is there? What does that mean for me as a consumer? When we talk about data ownership and data security and all of those different elements, what does that actually mean? Do I get to charge if somebody wants to use my information? How do I know if it's secure? How do I have the capacity, an everyday person have the capacity to be able to call my financial institution or a fintech that I'm potentially using on the side and ask them, how secure are you? What is it, do you have authentication processes? What other security measures do you have? Where are you storing our data? Where is the server? I'm very hard pressed to see everyday consumers, although not challenging the intellect of consumers, but I'm hard pressed to see how consumers are going to be able to ask all of those questions. So then the other question comes, and who is responsible for the security measures that can come with AI? And we're talking, and as Dev said earlier, we're talking really about full-on AI integration, not just data collection, but full-on integration of that. Data collection, we can understand, we can wrap our head around. The next version or the version after that, that starts becoming a little questionable for everybody. So I think, I'm a bit advocate of it. I am a professor at Concordia University as well, so I will always tout education as the number one kind of issue or solution that we need to focus on. And maybe that's where I'll kind of center my answer here around what do we need to do for consumers. And it really is to educate them around what are the products they're using, what are the implications for them, and how are they being used, and how can they check their security purposes for that as well. So I'll leave it there, but that really is for me my biggest advocacy, if I can word it that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very important points.
Yeah.
Mark, you want to go ahead?
I'll add to that. So, we're engineering architecture, proprietary products, and empowering our customers, our small commercial SME space, both agnostically in the B2C marketplace and also obviously for enterprise solutions B2B. And everything that we're building today is to leverage, again, 4 years in a longer term vision. And when it comes to, as you said, it's not just about hosting and collecting data and using it. It's about creating and baking those algorithms that can aggregate data through third parties or through enterprise integrations, open up APIs, and integrating into those enterprise platforms that already harvest or host customer large profile portfolios of small businesses. And how can we use that data now as an insurance provider to, one, create a unique underwriting experience so we can adjudicate risk up front, and then create tailor-made coverages for that unique small business, whether they're a small technology consulting firm, whether they're a home-based psychotherapist. And then more importantly, how now do you create algorithms and sophisticated AI to do more looping data analysis, regression analysis, etc. Versus in today, we're still doing it to manual environment where you're asking, an underwriter or an insurance company is asking the customer for their attributes of their business or their property, and then using it to do all of that analysis. And so the customer most times do not know those different attributes or the characteristics of the profile. So it's about how can they now leverage and have ownership over those attributes and that whole profile of data. And then more importantly, that those third-party institutions, you're talking about open banking, well, there's obviously a symbiotic relationship with open insurance as well, right? So it's about how can they now empower their own profile and those attributes in engineering their own unique product, and also have empowerment over the purchasing process at every pillar of the life cycle of their policy, upfront, claim, renewal. So that's where it's going really quickly. And then it's about putting them now in front of the whole, basically, life cycle of their insurance policy. Meaning, it's always been in the past where the terms have been dictated, and that treaty has been dictated by a third-party, multinational carrier, and it's your third largest expense of your business. Now the customer has more control and authority over that conversation, and what that means is that they can be now in front using that, that cloud of data, whether it's personal business or through an aggregate third-party bank, accounting firm, etc., and work with insurtechs like Foxquilt to basically put them in front of the purchasing process.
Great. I think Mark and Layial has covered most of the important topics around the challenges that fintech companies will face. They generally, the security, the privacy, and the compliance of the policies that is there, that's critical. But I would focus a little bit on a granular point on when you are building a machine learning application. While we build a model, we have to consider the responsibility side of things. It's called responsible AI nowadays. And most of the cloud provider who are the main enablers of the adoption of fintech companies, like today you can start a company because you have cloud providers providing you the platform. And they also promote the responsible AI side of things. What is responsible AI? When you build a model, it is important that it does not have biases inbuilt in the model. That is called fairness of the model. What is bias? What do you mean by bias? I'll give an example, try to explain in this forum. Is if you are building a model where you are, let's say, predicting height, right? And or let's say you are predicting the score on a SAT exam for students, and you got collected a lot of data about many students where you also took gender as an input variable. male and female, and you predicted that if there is a female factor, the score is dependent on that factor, where there is no relationship between male being a gender on your SAT score. So that's called bias. You introduced a bias without knowing, because gender was never a required variable in the model. However, if you are predicting COVID, whether you have COVID or not based on symptoms. Another example. Now in this case, this is a medical use case, and it depends on whether it is a male or female. It is maybe more prone to males. Now that time gender becomes a critical variable, and that's not bias. So this is just an example how silly it is. Like people tend to ignore it, but at the end the result is so impactful that it may completely change the outcome of the application that you're building. Similarly, the other applications of model is called accountability, transparency, and ethics. Both Microsoft, I would not say both, all the cloud providers, including AWS, Google, and Microsoft, have made billions of dollars investments in this space, and I'm happy to see the progress we have made so far. It makes life easy for fintech firms.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll jump to the third question. And Dev, I think you kind of answered a bit of the third question there, but I'll get into it. So what is the current state of systems within business organizations who deal with FIs, and what needs to happen from an app building and software architecture standpoint to support them? And we'll start off with Mark for this one. You're on mute, Mark. There we go.
So, the beauty of young fintechs like Foxquilt is our competitive advantage of our own speed, and then building architecture that's net new and transformational. And what we started building, 4 years ago in our architecture, now we're just leveraging this fall with our new, business model, transcending to a modern carrier. And what we're building today in our blueprint and architecture, some of that we won't be leveraging for another few years. So it's all about basically looking forward and building and partnering with big international firms that are aligned and have synergies in what you're trying to build together. And then they have to open up the windows and doors to all things and all facets within their organization, meaning it just can't be just a contract and a treaty that gives you authority to build product and capacity, etc. And we've partnered with the largest reinsurer in the world, and they've opened up all of their capabilities. And what I mean by that is that we're focused, yes, on re-engineering a customer journey with the customer first. When we wake up and go to bed at night, we think about the customer's interests. And what those customers are telling us is that they want the same type of retail experience that they have in other marketplaces, whether it's purchasing groceries online from Walmart, picking up. They want the same thing through their financial services companies, and they want to be empowered through that journey. So yes, very quickly to an end, unique tailor-made offering. And today's carriers, they market at a segment level. Everyone's a contractor, or everyone's hospitality. But when you peel it back, there's thousands of industry codes below that layer. So 80% are profitable, 20% are not. So it's building the architecture to support those unique offerings, whether you are a stonemason or a small technology consulting firm. They're different. They want those identities to be shaped accordingly around product. And then they want to be empowered through managing their own affairs. It's become status quo now. So 2020, if you are now winning a customer contract with a local municipality, they're gonna ask you, I need to be named to that insurance certificate. I need these required limits. Quite often, that customer doesn't have that in place, and they're now navigating that through a manual environment and through monolithic technology architecture through incumbent carriers. That can't happen. That simple change amendment takes 3 weeks, and they've lost the customer. So modern carriers like Foxquilt, building on microservices architecture, all those different silos, whether it's billing, policy, admin, etc., they're independent from one another, so not collapsing into one another, and the customer now has portals to navigate their own affairs, meaning that they're in front of their needs within their product. So how that transpires is that international firm that you've partnered with, whether it's a big bank or big reinsurer, big insurance company, they not only have to open up their APIs, but they have to let you really deep into the organization, because you're talking about engineering products, you're talking about rating and actuarial. It can't just be quarterly revisions of a spreadsheet and that's how they're operating today. It's basically looking backwards at using spreadsheets. It's about modeling algorithms around rating and underwriting and predictive analytics, and carving out a customer journey that basically puts the customer in front of their own affairs, that they can get that border instantly at 10 p.m. at night. Small business, they don't have time to be waiting 3 weeks. And then creating basically, using technology to create that experience upfront when they purchase net new, at claim, when they don't want to be in the contact center being serviced through claim. They want to navigate their own affairs from first notice to loss onward. And they want to be enticed with greater buying value when they renew. So it's all about rewarding and recognizing. You can only do that through having those intertwined relationships with that third party, a bank or insurance company, that's really letting you deep inside with all their capabilities, data, underwriting, actuarial, etc. And we're trying to be champions of the insurtech space, and we don't wait for anything to come to us. So we go after it. We make the world a lot smaller. And our two largest underwriting partnerships are out of London, UK, and Munich, Germany. And those incumbents in our domestic marketplace in Canada haven't been secure enough to open up APIs yet. So they're not releasing those rating tables, etc., to other insurtech platforms. So we don't wait for that. We go and build and basically champion as an innovator first. And we've been very fortunate and blessed with partners that have allowed us basically deep inside their homes.
Right on.
And if I can jump in really quickly, Massimo, sorry, I know we're a bit crunched for time, and sorry, Dev, to kind of jump in here. But I just want to point out that on that last point that Mark is talking about, that's really about the regulatory landscape as well that we're operating in here in Canada, right? And I don't want to harp on open banking or have to kind of advocate for it, but it's that competitive landscape that we see consistently. Fintechs are going to go, like Mark was mentioning, to other locations where they have the regulatory landscape or the policy to be able to play around with that data that they've been sitting on or can potentially acquire through time. And so it's really important for us as Canadians to also ask ourselves, especially as our financial institutions and our regulatory policies, what is the kind of landscape we can create so that fintechs like Mark's company don't have to go outside of Canada, can start working on the products and services here for consumers here with the data with them here in Canada as well. So I just wanted to kind of jump in there and make sure, at least to kind of, have that conversation so even our listeners can also kind of come in and put their input there.
Great. Dev, you have 1 minute, Dev.
I would echo what Mark and Layial said. I would say the cloud adoption is critical right now for organizations. If from last couple of years, banks are the last, or financial services are the last ones to adopt to cloud because of the security and privacy concerns, as you know it. However, in last 2 years, I have seen banks like RBC or TD, they all are on cloud. Not completely, but a couple of sections of their banks are now moving to cloud, which is a great news for fintech firms. Once you are in cloud, then imagine the scale up and down or scale out and scale in, which is depending on the demand on the market, you can change your infrastructure, and that will improve the adoption of consumers in this space. Under 1 minute.
You got it. Well, great job, everybody. I don't think we could have put a better panel together. You guys are all experts in your field. So really, on behalf of our panel, I'd like to thank you all again for joining us today. I hope you have walked away from this session with valuable insights on AI and fintech in this ever-changing landscape we're in. So really, to the audience, feel free to reach out directly to any of our panelists. Their contact information will be posted on the site. And thank you all again. Dev, the audio was perfect for being on a beach.